Hello. Hope everybody is very well. I'm hoping you can all hear me too. I'm having I'm hoping that the people in the Zoom can't hear me. No, there is no sign that the Zoom can hear me. Okay, I think I'm good. Sorry, I have to be signed into a Zoom thing that I'm doing afterwards and do this whilst on the other thing. So welcome, and I will just put a quick link in the chat. No, that's not it. That's not it at all. Oh God, delete. Hang on a minute. What have I done with the chat? It's over there in the Zoom thing. Right, hang on a minute. So, oh God, this is the worst start to a video. If you're watching this on catch up, I'm so sorry. It was no better in real life. Why is that doing that? Anyway, what I'm trying to do is put a link in the chat to say that I'm doing a little chat show after this. So if you are in need of more company after the read through today, then go to twitch.tv/StuGoldsmith and there's a little chat show happening over there. Thank you all for your comments on my appearance. I went for a run today, doing my best to beat myself out of this doldrummy mood that I've been in all week. So I went for a run and then I thought, well, I'm doing this chat show later, so I'll put some makeup on. I really love doing my makeup. I know it's the lockdown's really taught me that there's a lot of things that I do just because I feel self-conscious out of the house, but that doing my makeup is just for me. I love it. I've done it on days where I haven't even been doing this. I love that half an hour of listening to like an audiobook or something or a podcast and doing my whole face, and I just find it so calming. Which reminds me, I wanted to say to you guys, my podcast launched yesterday. Hooray! So if you are in need of more audio content that you can access whenever you like, doesn't have to be on the live stream, then my friend Will Duggan and I started a podcast at the beginning of the year where we go on days out around the UK and record a podcast while we're on them. And now obviously we can't leave the house at the moment, but if you're looking to leave the house audibly at least, then episode 1 is up. So if you search for the National Treasures podcast, you'll find our podcast. The first episode is we're taking you to Blenheim Palace, so you can come out for a day trip with me and Will to Blenheim Palace, and it's got like a few facts and a bit of history in there, but mainly it's kind of two friends hanging out for the day. Like we have a cake and we chat to the volunteers, and it's really lovely. I'm really pleased with it, actually. It's my kind of vibe. I think it sort of sums me up quite well, my interests and my friendship with Will, and it's sort of fun and it's a bit irreverent, but it's also like, you know, a bit nerdy if you're into that kind of thing. So if you fancy that, it's the National Treasures podcast, and there'll be a new episode every Wednesday. So we managed to get to 7 places to record before the lockdown came in. And then what we've done for the last few is 1, we went on a day out into a video game. 2, we went to the island of Catan and had a day out on the island of Catan. And then for the 3rd and 4th episode, we my husband Tom, you've met him several times, he did us a D&D type adventure where Will and I went to the zoo, but as Dungeons and Dragons characters. So yeah, a few of you saying you've listened, yay, and a few of you halfway through, yay. Oh good, I'm glad you liked it anyway. Artworld says I sound very different on the podcast. Oh, maybe. I was probably drinking less back then. My voice is probably deeper now. I've been in for 2 months and having a glass of wine every night. So there you go. So that's the podcast. And if you want to pop over to Stu's Twitch for a chat show afterwards, it started at 9, but obviously I was doing this. But yeah, it's just a bit of a few guests. I think Alfie Brown is on it, some street performers. Stu is great. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Comedian podcast, but yeah. So there we go. That's enough ramble. But I wanted to say that the podcast was out. I'm really proud of it. So if you do listen to it, that be great. I'd love to know what you think. And yeah, if you've got any suggestions for places to go to. No accents on the podcast, says Grace. No. Well, Will's accent, he's from Kettering. So we should launch in to our chapter. It's the morning after the night before. Now, the voting. Okay, well, I had a plan in my head for how you voted, and don't know how happy you're gonna be, but I've tried to be nice to you. So let's have a read, shall we? Emma arrived at the shop peeling panicked. No, that's that's not words, is it? Oh, come on, Laura, it's nearly Friday. Emma arrived at the shop feeling panicked and flaky. Her second hangover in as many weeks, and she didn't seem to be improving at coping with them. This hangover was definitely worse than the one from the dinner at home the previous week. This one was the bastard love child of many different alcohols, all mixing. She was also furious with herself for having been so drunk. Sometimes she woke up hungover and could pinpoint the moment the night before where she should have stopped drinking. This was not one of those nights. This was the sort of night where drunkenness had swept over like a wave, and because drunkenness was a side effect and not her intention, it had not occurred to her to stop at any point. It wasn't that she thought she'd have acted any different had she been sober. The thought of turning down the option of a night in Theo's bed was ridiculous. It was just, had she been sober, it might have been more, well, memorable. She had vague snatches of the night, but nothing concrete. It wasn't exactly the glorious first romantic lovemaking she had hoped. But maybe that was more romantic in many ways, she tried to tell herself. You know, the two of us so passionately interested in each other that we can't help but fall into bed the first opportunity we have. The bus stopped at the junction, and Emma's stomach carried on moving a few feet further than her seat. She dinged the bell, suddenly noticing where she was. Usually, she'd go and stand by the door in preparation for getting off, but she didn't trust her wobbly knees to cope with her blood alcohol level and a bus. She had stuffed Theo's shirt into her handbag, cringing at the thought he might assume she'd taken it as a memento. It had just been in the way of her bra, and she'd not had the motor skills to put it back down. The bus pulled into her stop and she clambered off, as grateful to be back on dry land as a sailor who'd been months at sea. The Christmas shop glittered across the road and she began to cross, immediately stepping out in front of a car which beeped furiously at her. Her pulse shot up and she backed away, apologizing profusely with her hands and eyes to the terrified-looking driver behind the wheel. Checking that the road was clear, Emma tried again and made it across the road to the shop. On the pavement, her momentum from the dash across the road was such that she only narrowly managed to avoid colliding with a pushchair. The man pushing the small child scowled at her, and she mumbled an apology to him before scurrying into the shop feeling like she'd just completed total wipeout. "Are you all right?" said Fiona, looking up aghast at a pale and trembling Emma. "What on earth's happened? You look awful." Emma sat down shakily on the seat behind the counter. "I had sex with Theo," she said, blinking and feeling every millimetre of her eyelid scrape down across her eye. "What?" shrieked Fiona. "What, just now? Oh my God!" Emma finally thought to look around and check for customers, but thankfully there were none in the shop just then. "Oh yeah, you are still wearing your clothes from last night." "My uniform is downstairs." "Oh, Fiona, I'm so hungover." "Yeah, you look awful. You're very pale. Oh my God, this is huge." Was it huge? Emma felt a wave of nausea wash over at Fiona's question. Not just hangover nausea, but also an odd sadness that she couldn't have answered Fiona's risque question even if she'd wanted to. It had all felt very nice, but she didn't have a good enough handle on the details to even play along. It was really lovely, if a bit drunk. He's fun. He seemed to really like me. The evening passed so fast and I got a bit too drunk, if I'm honest, but he was really drunk too. We both were. It was funny. Oh, Fiona, I might be a bit useless today. Fiona eyed her, assessing the damage. "I think I can cope with you not being completely helpful. I do most days." She said with a smile, and Emma managed to laugh through her deeply unbalanced feeling. "Do you think you can watch the shop for 20 minutes? Emma nodded, and then deeply regretted nodding as it shook the entire planet and made her throat feel full of warm noodles. She really wanted to lie down on a cloud while someone fed her cool water through a straw and played her back a videotape of the best bits of last night. Every now and again, a little voice in her head would say, "You slept with Theo," and a little shiver would run through her arms. "Now, Em, I'm going to ask you something now, and I already feel far too much like your mum to feel good about myself, so I don't want to fuss when I ask you this, all right?" Emma looked up at Fiona, wondering what on earth was coming next. Did you use contraception? Emma looked at Fiona in horror. She had absolutely no idea. Her brain scrambled to supply an answer. In truth, it hadn't even occurred to her in the moment to think about condoms. Why not? Asked the most sensible part of her. Because that's not what happens in brilliant love stories, screamed back the teenager that appeared to be sheltering in her hippocampus. There isn't a point where Prince Charming has to pause to put a rubber on. Also, what does it matter if we're pregnant? We're going to marry him and be together forever, so why would we care if there's a head start on the children? A brief image of some curly-haired grandkids floated through Emma's imagination, and she cringed at the memory of her fantasies from the night before. I can't be sure, she croaked to Fiona. I'm not on the pill. Fiona nodded and smiled. Okay, she said warmly, seeming to sense that Emma was fragile enough without adding on more pressure. I'll pop to Boots and sort some stuff. You keep an eye on this place. Luckily for Emma, no customers came into the shop while Fiona was out on her mission, and she could just sit with her face pressed up against the cool plaster wall. She tried to imagine what the overwhelming feeling within her was, and again, what have I written? It was all going so well, wasn't it? One quick fuck up at the beginning, and then I'd read like an actual adult human being for a while. She tried to examine what the overwhelming... I haven't read this one to Tom, you see, so I haven't found all the mistakes in it. She tried to examine what the overwhelming feeling within her was, and again and I see, again and again. I thought I'd just... Okay, right, come on, Laura. Sweet bloody 5, you silly bitch. She tried to examine what the overwhelming feeling within her was, and again she came back to the realization that she felt sad. She was elated to have begun something with Theo, but annoyed with herself that it had begun in a way that she couldn't revel in. She couldn't take it back, though. What had been was what, or however that sentence was supposed to go. By the time the bell above the door rang to signal Fiona's return, she had decided not to dwell, but to make sure their next date was exactly as perfect as she had dreamed of. Fiona came in and dropped a morning after pill and a meal deal into Emma's lap. Emma was profoundly grateful for both and immediately promoted Fiona to role of best friend. Fiona had chosen the meal deal wisely. A triple sandwich for maximum stodge soaking up ability, followed by some salty crisps, a sugary Snickers, and then a fruit smoothie as well, so Emma felt vaguely healthy about it all. Emma let it begin its healing work and then headed downstairs to change into her uniform. She reappeared 10 minutes later on the shop floor with a cheerier attitude and a cup of tea for each of them. Fiona threw her a cloth, which she amazingly caught, and she got to work polishing the glass on the door, ready for the weekend. So, how did things go with Norman yesterday? After the big flash mob, Norman had refused to leave the shop without securing Fiona's agreement that she would talk to him about their future. Fiona had been mortified and very aware that the flash mob had enticed a large number of tourists into the shop, who all wanted to part with their cash for mementos of their exciting holiday event. She had agreed to meet Norman after work just to get rid of him and get on with earning some cash. Well... Emma didn't like the hesitation in Fiona's voice. She wiped cautiously at a smudge on the glass and wanted more than anything to just shoot the bolt across, pull up a seat and spend the afternoon catching up properly with Fiona's gossip. I met him after work like he asked. Well, in fact, I didn't. He turned back up to the shop, said he wanted to make sure I definitely met up with him, so he met me at the door. Very gallant. Emma rolled her eyes and purposefully avoided smiling at a couple who looked like they might try and come into the shop. They changed their minds and walked away, and Emma felt deviously satisfied. He said it was a nice evening and took me to the park. Honestly, Emma, you should have seen it. Emma didn't turn round. The park? I've seen it. It's not enough to make me change my mind about Norman. No, you don't understand. Fiona's voice was full of wonder, and Emma felt a crawling sensation in her stomach that was either impending fear or that tequila shot doing backflips. He prepared this insanely amazing picnic for us. There was an enormous blanket, 2 bottles of champagne, not even Prosecco, but actual champagne. There was one of those proper picnic baskets, like in old films about posh people. I know you're probably rolling your eyes over there, but honest to goodness, there was a man playing the violin too. Emma, it was the most romantic thing I've ever seen in my life. It definitely wasn't the tequila making Emma feel queasy. It was the distinct feeling that the next words out of Fiona's mouth were going to reveal that she had given Norman another chance. Right. Emma let her word hang in the air, trying to indicate to Fiona that she was listening, but not approving one little bit. So what did he have to say then? Fiona propped the door open to polish the Emma propped the door open to polish the outside of it. She sincerely hoped that people on the street wouldn't take this as an invitation to come in and disturb them. Well, that was the only downside. Fiona chewed on her bottom lip, thinking and looking a bit downcast. He really didn't have much to add to his little speech after the song display. I think he really seemed to think that would be enough, so he sort of repeated that and then seemed a bit baffled when I wasn't totally sold. That's not Welsh anymore, is it? I don't know what's happened there. So hang on a minute, Wales. So he sort of repeated that and then seemed a bit baffled when I wasn't totally. How do you say totally? This is like future scope all over again. Every now and again, there's a word that I just can't do. Maybe that's Swedish. If I finally found Swedish. When I wasn't totally sold, that's not it, Ada. I don't know how to do that word. Then seemed a bit baffled when I wasn't totally. Totally. I don't. Anyway, totally. Completely. Thank you, Kim. We'll just use the word completely. And then seemed a bit baffled when I wasn't completely sold. Emma felt cheered. Honestly, all of you watching at home, even if you're watching this on catch up, I want you to stop right now and try and say the word totally in a Welsh accent because it's bloody difficult. So, yes, Ben, I do know you're still there, but that doesn't mean I'm any better at doing my job. That doesn't mean I wasn't completely sold. Emma felt cheered. I'm actually really proud of you for standing up for him. To him. You're much better off with Simon. Remember that he actually makes you happy. Did you feel happy with Norman yesterday? No. Fiona hung on the word for a second. Emma wondered if she was only just realizing her own happiness was a factor in the whole situation. But he looked so sad, Fiona continued, and Emma wasn't sure how much more of this roller coaster of expectation she could handle. Emma, I felt like I owed it to him to say I'd see him again. Emma whirled on Fiona and felt her vision keep whirling a bit further than her eyes expected it to. Fiona, no, you don't owe him anything. That's ludicrous. You either want to be with him or not. And if you don't want to be with him, then that's the end of it. He might be sad, but that's for him to deal with, not you. But maybe things would be different this time. Can you hear the words coming out of your mouth? Emma snapped, and then bit her tongue, remembering how badly it had gone the last time she and Fiona had disagreed over Norman in this shop. Sorry, that was snappy. I apologise. She tried to back down gracefully. But Fee, he never really made you happy. Why would you go back to that? Fiona seemed to shrink, but she at least nodded in Emma's direction. I know, Em. Thank you, I know. I'm not saying I'm going to jump back into a relationship with him. I think, we were together for a long time, and the whole time it was complicated and shady and difficult. Because he was choosing to be married to someone else, Emma screamed internally, but managed to barricade the words into her mouth. The pressure of not allowing the steam out of her ears was really adding to the hangover headache in a bad way. So I'm just giving myself some time to think about the possibility of being with him without those difficulties and whether that's something I want, Fiona finished, sounding very mature and contemplative? Thinky. Let's go with thinky. Emma nodded, but slower this time to give the world its best chance of keeping up with her eyes. Right. So what does that mean, in actual terms? Are you going on a date with him again? She asked slowly. I've told him I'll call him in a few days and we can talk then, Fiona said, smiling up at a man entering the shop. Hi there, she called over and then turned back to Emma. I think that's what I owe him, myself, and our relationship. If it's over, and for the record, I think it is, then I want it to be over with no questions, so I don't have to mull it over all the time. Emma thought this sounded extremely sensible and told Fiona so. Fiona nodded soberly and headed over to offer the customer some assistance. Emma popped out onto the high street to polish the outside glass, and enjoy the sunshine on her face. It was bright outside, and she squinted at the glass, telling herself that if she could clear the smudges off the glass, then she could also wipe her first date with Theo to something shiny. That smudge there was his co-worker's. A bit of elbow grease, and bam! They had no longer been on the date. That big greasy nose print there? That was a bottle of wine, and if she gave it a little spritz of window lean and a few minutes of attention, then she hadn't drunk it. This huge smear over here? Well, that was her first time with Theo being a drunken fumble, but if she focused on it hard, then it was Jack. Emma blinked at the glass, wondering if her eyes were playing tricks on her, but no. There on the glass were Jack and Elliot. She managed to stop herself flinging her head round and turned slowly to see Jack and Elliot on the other side of the street. Jack threw a lame wave across the road, and she was startled by his making contact. She lifted the cloth in a wave back and stood still as Jack and Elliot began to cross the road towards her. End of chapter. So I think I was quite kind to you there, only Dirkus is furious. I was quite kind to you there because I did say in my head, I was like, if they pick Park, then she's going to give Norman another shot. And if they pick Starbucks, then she just says no. And Park won it overwhelmingly. But what I thought was I would be kind to you and I would say she's given him another shot, but on those conditions, because I thought it might have been too mean to make you put up with a Theo chapter followed by Norman winning. And I'll be less sneaky for tomorrow's chapter. So your question is a little bit more straightforward, and you'll sort of know what you're voting for. So you get to decide what Jack's up to. So your question for the Big Friday chapter tomorrow night is, was Jack, 1, looking for Emma, 2, just passing, 3, shopping for something large, 4, shopping for something small, or 5, out to lunch with someone? Those are your options. So I thought I've been a little bit cagey about what you're voting about, but I thought I'll give you a reasonable guess at what those mean. So those are your options. Looking for Emma, just passing, shopping for something large, shopping for something small, or out for lunch with someone. You get to decide what Jack is doing on the other side of the road. And we'll see. They're going to chat tomorrow. What? So there you go. You can get voting. Yeah, there you go. There's your chapter. So if you feel like it, pop over to Stu Goldsmith's Infinite Sofa. I think I'm chatting about the clock book and a few other things with him. And yeah, the podcast National Treasures. Give it a listen and like and subscribe to this, etc., etc. So yeah. Have a good day if you're in the southern hemisphere. Have a lovely evening. Have good sleep. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. And I'll see you for Friday. Bye, gang. Bye.